during your talk, there was a couple of posts in the chat saying anyone can get heart disease, anyone can get cancer. How do you respond to that in light of the whole talk that you gave today?
I don't know what they mean by that. Anyone can get heart disease, anyone can get cancer. What do they mean? Are they saying this doesn't matter? I can eat anything I want and not get cancer or not get heart attack. It's
That's how I took it. I don't know,
what do they mean? Or are they saying that sometimes you're exposed to cancer elements like asbestos or chemicals or smoke or stress early in life that cause so much damage that even if you eat right, you still are going to get cancer anyway. And there are some unusual cases that, so we're not saying that in every case that a person eats right, they can't get cancer. But that's because they've had other strong cancerous exposures and they didn't find, they ate so, and those exposures were so severe earlier in life.
Mm.
It still doesn't mean cancer would not be 100% protected against had they lived in a clean environment and had the right diet from birth. And also, some cancers are caused by what your mother ate. You can get what if you get acute blastocytic leukemia at the age of 2? Well, that's linked to the lack of vegetables in the diet of the mother's diet and her exposure to luncheon meats, which increases risk of blastocytic leukemia in their offspring. So yes, but just because the leukemia is related to the mother eating hot dogs before you were born, it doesn't mean it still doesn't not caused. It still has a causation, and it still could have been protected against if the mother's diet was good. So any way you look at it, this person, so you're not still going to get heart disease, you're not still going to get cancer if you make the changes early enough in life, and if your exposure, if you haven't had some unusual exposure that may be too highly toxic. So what I'm saying is that nothing's 100% guaranteed, but you'd be really foolish not to stack the cards in your favor when nutritional excellence has so much power to control your health destiny.
At one point you mentioned, eating too much potato. Assuming that it's cooked healthy, we're not talking about French fries and chips. Can potato be good for you? What do you consider too much?
That has to be answered on an individual basis from person to person. Could LeBron James, exercising all day long, have more potatoes because he's already eaten his broccoli and his soybeans and his nuts and his berries, and he ate all the healthy stuff. So he has room in his diet without pushing himself into too many calories to shove, and he's going to burn off those extra calories anyway. So maybe he can have more potato, but can a woman who's 5 foot tall, who only has a 1,100, 1,200 calorie caloric window, fit much potato in there without excluding all the other healthier things she could have been eating that protect against cancer? And what about this person who's overweight and then the glycemic effect? The point I'm making right now is that we have to score foods on a hierarchical scale of best, better, moderate, okay, and worse. Obviously, broccoli is better than cauliflower, and cauliflower is better than potato, right? And potato is better than white rice, and we're going to score things. But when we're looking to fight cancer, potatoes are not a cancer-fighting food. If you put too much potatoes in your diet, then you pushed off your plate the space that you would have needed to eat some of the more powerfully protective foods. So you can't eat that. So a potato-based diet or a grain-based diet or a rice-based diet are not ideal diets for longevity and anti-cancer benefits. So I have a little bit of I have some potato in my diet. And what I do, I make a mashed potato with 6 cups of cauliflower, chopped spinach, and 1 Yukon Gold potato with fried onion and roasted garlic, and it tastes like the greatest mashed potato you ate. But it's 6 because the percent of potato in there is relatively low compared to the cauliflower, the spinach, the onion. It still gets the potato flavor from the 1 Yukon Gold I added in there. So in other words, I'm looking at my whole plate and saying, today, did I eat all the favorite food I needed to eat? And if I eat too much potatoes, I can't get it all in. I can't get the beans I want to eat, right? So beans are more favored carbohydrate than potato, particularly when you have a metabolically challenged when you're overweight too. So the answer is, it depends on the individual.
Okay, and just for the sake of the recipe, I'm hearing 6 cups of cauliflower, 1 Yukon potato, and then some sauteed onions with spinach, I assume sauteed in water.
Well, I sauteed the onion on a dry pan.
Okay.
Nothing in the pan. I got the pan hot first so the onion wouldn't stick to it. because I put the water in it, it makes it dilutes doesn't get flavorful enough. I cut up the onion, I put it on the hot pan, it sizzles and it just starts to glisten. I pull it off, mix it with the mashed potato, and I make some garlic nutter. I put a little garlic, roasted garlic with a little bit of nuts like cashews and hemp seeds with the roasted garlic I already mashed, had in my refrigerator. I took a little bit of that, mixed in that in there too.
And then the spinach, where's that coming from?
Well, spinach could come from anywhere, but sometimes I could just put some frozen spinach in there, just to.
Okay. Okay. All right. Beautiful. I'm gonna try that. You're talking about cooked mushrooms. How about mushroom coffees, which have become popular, where it's just blended mushroom, not actual coffee?
I think that's good. I even make one of those.
Okay. All right. Awesome. And how about regular coffee? Is there a place for coffee in this style of eating?
It's not the biggest thing for me. I'd much rather people pay attention to not drinking alcohol. That's the big thing. And a little coffee, one cup of coffee is not so bad. But I'm not an advocate of coffee. I think the studies showing coffee's benefits because of its flavonoids are indicative of how low the American diet is in flavonoids. That makes even coffee something beneficial to them, but it's not beneficial to us with a high flavonoid diet. And the caffeine interferes with sleep and lets us get by with less sleep. And it makes it feel like you don't have to sleep as well if you can use caffeine to alert yourself. And it's addicting, and it also has negative effects on the brain. So I am not a coffee advocate, though the person loves to have one cup of coffee a day. I'm not going to make a big deal of that. But nor do I accept all those studies showing coffee is so beneficial. I kind of disregard a lot of that because I consider the context of how bad the person's diet is. You know what I mean? And the benefits from coffee we don't need if we're already eating beans and stuff.
So you used the term dysplastic at one point, saying that the cell becomes dysplastic. What does dysplastic mean?
It means that the cell starts to become abnormal, even though it's not yet become cancerous. It's an early stage of abnormality before it turns into cancer.
Right. And what are your thoughts on, I'm going to break this down into two parts. I'll start off with intermittent fasting in general.
Well, we started to talk about time-restricted eating, where you're eating a lighter diet, right? And we want people not to overeat. And some people are more successful with intermittent fasting, losing weight rather than sticking to their diets consistently from day to day. I find my experience over the last 40 years has been that people who are overweight and have trouble staying on the diet or eating the right amount of calories, they do better when they can learn exactly what to do and then practice it and repeat that same thing over and over again for many months till they get it down. So changing from one day where you're having a low amount of calories and then you do that for a few days and then you go to a high amount of calories, I find in the long term, it leads to more of the diet mentality and people yo-yoing on and off with extreme caloric restriction. And I'd rather people I get less recidivism and more consistency in people eating the right amount of food when they practice it right and don't go from one extreme to the other extreme. So I'm a little more cautious in my use of fasting and intermittent fasting, particularly in people who have trouble with food addiction and overeating. I'd rather them just kind of iron down what they're supposed to do every day and stick with it and just not eat late at night. That doesn't mean I don't recognize the studies on intermittent fasting or the fact that I use intermittent fasting when I'm dealing with a person with cancer and they need chemotherapy. We're intermittent fasting or restricting them on the 3 or 4 days before their chemo to let the chemo have less side effects and have the chemo be more effective. So I might be utilizing fasting therapeutically. I might be using water fasting with a person with asthma to get off to be able to, they don't need inhalers anymore, or with a person with an unhealing. And still, I'm using it in the toolbox, but I'm not using it across the board for most people. It's used very selectively. Most people do better with just consistency, doing the right thing day in and day out.
Do you have a cookbook?
Yeah, I have lots of cookbooks. The Eat to Live cookbook was one of my best-selling cookbooks, but I also have the Eat to Live Quick and Easy cookbook. But all my books, every one of them all my cookbooks have lots of recipes in them, but every one of my regular books has more than 50 recipes in them, have a lot of recipes.
Oh,
So
wow.
here's the Eat to Live. This was one of my 7 best-selling books. This is a #1 New York Times best-selling book called the Eat to Live Cookbook, which is my personal favorite. But a lot of people like the Eat to Live Quick and Easy cookbook because that's the one that has the recipes without so many different ingredients in them. But I don't care about that. I just rather have the, but yes, all my books have recipes in them. And I have more than, I think I have more than 1,500 recipes on the website too, on my website, where you can like search the type of recipe you want to look at.
So we've about a minute left. What would be, if someone could make one change as a starting point to moving toward this direction, what would you suggest that starting point be, that single change?
Lunch. The single change would be lunch. Lunch is a meal you eat out of the house, and you're susceptible to eating junk or garbage. And that's the meal where you should have a big salad, a bowl of soup, and a piece of fruit. You should bring your lunch with you. You should, or you go to a salad place and get like a salad bar. So breakfast is easy. You can have like some cereal, some like oats with seeds and berry and fruit on it. Dinner, is something you should be eating lighter and earlier. But if you get the lunch right, you've got half it down. You've got half of it under your belt already. Just get the lunch right.